Hi, I'm Pamela, and I'm 30 years old. I've been married to Patrick for 3 years, and we don't have kids yet. Our lives took a drastic turn when Patrick's father, Jesse, passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack. At the time, we were living in a different state, and the news hit us like a ton of bricks. During the funeral, Patrick's uncle hinted that, as the youngest and only son, Patrick should return home to support his mother through this tough time. A few months later, Patrick told me he had transferred to an office closer to his family. He made this decision unilaterally and informed me afterward, which hurt because such a significant choice should have involved both of us. When I expressed my frustration, Patrick apologized, admitting he had anticipated my objections. He knew I had a rocky relationship with his mother, Mary, which was mutual. When we lived farther away, our visits were limited to major holidays, mainly due to work. Mary often complained about our absences, frequently comparing us to Patrick's sisters, Amanda and Diane, who lived nearby and visited frequently. Despite the distances and costs, Patrick always defended our situation. While our relationship with Mary was tense, it had been manageable. However, her primary issue with me revolved around our childlessness. During a summer visit, she bluntly questioned my ability to have children, even comparing me to others. Ultimately, I decided to move closer, thinking we wouldn't be living together all the time anyway. To my surprise, Mary seemed genuinely pleased with my choice. 3 weeks later, she invited me over for tea, the first time I accepted such an invitation, albeit reluctantly. When I arrived at my in-laws' house, Mary and Amanda greeted me. "Pamela, it's been ages, why haven't you come to visit since moving here?" Amanda asked, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Already, I was regretting my decision to come. Mary chimed in cheerfully, "I was thrilled when you moved closer, but it seems I was mistaken. You don't like me, do you?" I wanted to confirm her suspicion just to see her reaction, but I held back. "I don't dislike you. I've just been feeling unwell adjusting to the new environment," I explained, partially true since I had been resting at home due to fatigue, and Patrick hadn't mentioned this visit. Why was I even here, enduring their harsh words? Mary quickly accused me of disliking her, but wasn't it the other way around? How were we supposed to get along under these circumstances? Amanda interjected sharply, "How can you speak to your mother-in-law like that? Apologize." I expected Mary to respond with anger, but instead, she caught me off guard. "You're right, I have been mean. I'm sorry, Pamela. I also regret my comments about children. I was being nosy." I braced for a lecture, anticipating some hidden snark, but none came. Even Amanda seemed surprised. "All I wanted was to hold a grandchild," Mary admitted. She explained that Amanda's husband was infertile, and Diane seemed to have fertility issues, so she had placed her hopes on Patrick and me. Despite knowing about Amanda and Diane's struggles, Patrick and I had discussed having children and were considering it, so I asked for some patience. "Please, just give us time," I said, lowering my gaze slightly. Despite everything, a sense of duty lingered within me. "I'm sorry, but do visit us sometimes." After that, Mary and Amanda returned to watching TV and sipping tea as if the earlier tension had vanished. "I like this announcer," Mary remarked about her favorite local personality. "She's so energetic and bright." As I watched them, I felt a pang of regret. Perhaps if I had been more outgoing, things could have been different with Mary and her family. It was a fleeting, naive thought. I was relieved to have shared my feelings that day, hoping it might lead to better relations, yet my optimism quickly faded. That evening, Patrick stormed in, visibly upset. "I heard from Mom that you said you don't want to get along." She was crying. "Pamela, what did you say to her?" I was stunned by his reaction. Just earlier, he had left with a smile, and now he seemed to accuse me of something entirely different. "Patrick, there's been a misunderstanding." I tried to clarify. I told her it's hard for me to be friends given our current relationship. "How does that mean I don't want to get along?" I felt scared now. Patrick appeared to fully believe Mary's distorted version of events. His earlier smile now seemed deceptive, and I felt lost. I tried to explain further, but he wasn't convinced. Then my phone buzzed with a message from Amanda. "After all the effort of moving here, weren't you prepared to make it work? If you're here, you need to be a bit more patient." Patrick glanced at me as if echoing Amanda's words. I had moved here because I cared about being with him, not just to appease Mary and Amanda. Looking into Patrick's eyes, I said, "It's clear that Mary and the others may never approve of me. Maybe you should consider someone she likes more." The word divorce slipped out before I could catch it, and for the first time, Patrick looked genuinely alarmed. "Wait a minute, how did we end up at divorce? All I want is for you to get along better with my family," he said, bewildered by the sudden turn of our conversation. It was clear he couldn't comprehend that his family might never accept me, which left me equally baffled. Yet, Patrick seemed determined to resolve this misunderstanding. The following day, he returned home late from work and shared the details of his conversation with his mother. She had acknowledged the misunderstanding and apologized. "What a fuss this all turned out to be," he remarked casually. Then, he proposed that we celebrate Mary's upcoming birthday at a fancy restaurant. The abrupt shift from tension to talk of celebration caught me off guard. but it was evident that Patrick was making an effort to mend fences, even if the path ahead appeared rocky. Patrick suggested that if we framed the birthday dinner as my idea, it might improve his mother's perception of me. Although I was skeptical that Mary would genuinely appreciate such gestures, considering her complex personality, I agreed to make the reservation. I invited Amanda and the others, specifying a table for 8. Patrick agreed, but as the date approached, I began to feel increasingly uneasy. He had been distant lately, offering only curt, indifferent responses to my attempts at conversation, which left me feeling isolated. On the night of the dinner, we arrived at the restaurant to find Mary, Amanda, and their spouses already gathered. The host led us to our table, casting a questioning glance that only heightened my discomfort. "Happy birthday, Mary," I greeted her cheerfully, trying to bridge the gap. However, Mary didn't even acknowledge me. She turned to the others, thanking them for coming to her celebration. It felt like a deliberate snub. Amanda looked confused. "I thought today was a family gathering," she remarked, casting a brief, puzzled glance in my direction. Diane, sensing the tension, looked over with concern. In that moment, I realized I was being deliberately excluded. Resolving not to let this ruin my evening, I decided to keep to myself and leave early. Just as I was settling into this plan, a staff member approached our table with an awkward demeanor. "I'm sorry, but the reservation was actually made for 7 people, he informed us." Confused, I replied, "I distinctly reserved for 8, could there be a mistake?" "No, it should definitely be for 8, I insisted, recalling my conversation with the restaurant. "Oh yes, but about a week ago, we received a call from a gentleman asking to change the number to 7, the worker explained. Stunned, I turned to Patrick, seeking an explanation. His response left me reeling. "Yes, please, service for 7, everyone's here now," he said plainly, confirming the change himself. In that moment, I felt a rush of betrayal and disbelief. Patrick's actions made it clear that, despite his reassurances, his commitment to smoothing family tensions was superficial at best. The realization that he had manipulated the situation behind my back was deeply unsettling, casting a shadow over what was supposed to be a joyful family gathering. I stood there, stunned, as Patrick turned to me with an accusatory glare. "I heard from Mom that you've been undermining our family, saying I don't earn enough and that I'm insensitive. You had a lot to say, huh?" It became clear that when Patrick had spoken to Mary about the dinner reservation a week ago, she had filled him with all sorts of falsehoods. Blinded by anger and believing her, he had called the restaurant pretending to be me and reduced the reservation from 8 to 7. The staff, recognizing the family surname, hadn't questioned the change. I couldn't understand how Patrick could be so easily misled in such a short time. With this realization, I questioned my place at the table. When I confronted Patrick, demanding he apologize to everyone present and reflect on his actions, he did something unexpected. He insisted that I should apologize to my in-laws and then go home alone to think things over. Naturally, I refused. I couldn't admit to something that wasn't my fault. I hadn't said, nor did I ever need, a husband who took his mother's word over mine. Tears of frustration welled in my eyes. Why had I followed him here? As I wrestled with my emotions, Patrick began to panic, but it was too late. Mary watched the scene unfold with a smug smile, clearly relishing the chaos she had orchestrated. I turned to Patrick, my voice icy. "Next time, marry a younger, more obedient daughter-in-law. Maybe then you'll have children and be happier." Mary's response was sharp and cutting. "Pamela, why don't you go back to your parents' house? A daughter-in-law is ultimately an outsider. You're not charming at all, so just leave quickly." Her words stung, but they only strengthened my resolve. I didn't need her permission to leave. "I'd like to see someone who could actually tolerate someone as twisted as you," I shot back before turning to walk out of the restaurant. Patrick remained silent, his head buried in his hands. Just as I reached the exit, I heard someone calling my name. It was Diane and her husband. "Pamela, wait," Diane said, distress etched on her face. "I can't take it anymore. Mom and Amanda haven't changed at all. I always knew the gossip about you was false." Her acknowledgement amidst the chaos brought me a flicker of solace, as she expressed her readiness to distance herself from the toxicity. This moment of solidarity, however small, offered the support I desperately needed. As I absorbed Diane's words, my phone rang, flashing Mary's name. Ugh, what now? But before I could answer, Patrick's name replaced hers on the display. I muted the call under my breath, watching Diane and her husband exchange knowing looks. "Pamela, you might want to head back to the restaurant. Something interesting is happening," Diane suggested, her eyes glimmering with unspoken secrets. They left, looking oddly satisfied with themselves. Curiosity eventually won over my urge to escape the drama. When I answered Patrick's call, his voice was frantic, laced with panic. "Pamela, I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was all a lie. I'll send the divorce papers later," he blurted out before quickly adding, "Wait, can you come back, please? It's a lifetime request." His almost childish plea almost made me laugh, but remembering Diane's cryptic hint, I decided to return to the restaurant. As I arrived, I was greeted by an unexpected scene. A crowd had gathered around Patrick's table, where a local TV announcer, Mary's favorite, was speaking into a microphone. The tension in the air was palpable. Mary was stumbling over her words, clearly struggling to defend herself. "No, that's not it. It's a misunderstanding," she stammered. Patrick and Amanda looked awkward and uneasy, clearly unprepared for this sudden turn of events. The announcer, microphone in hand, pressed Mary further. "You loudly declared in the restaurant that Pamela is an outsider and should leave. What did you mean by that? Please explain in detail." Meanwhile, Diane's husband and others who had been offended by earlier events had quietly slipped away. It all felt surreal as I stood there, somewhat stunned. I pieced together that this had become a public spectacle, possibly being broadcast live. I suddenly remembered I had forgotten to confirm the reservation details amidst the initial chaos. As I tried to grasp the situation, a staff member approached, noting my confusion. "It's been quite a day, hasn't it?" they said, explaining that a TV recording had been scheduled at the restaurant that very day, which explained the unexpected media presence. The entire ordeal had unfolded on live television, casting our family drama in stark, unfiltered light for all to see. As I processed the bizarre turn of events, I felt a mix of vindication and disbelief wash over me. Although the dining area provided some semblance of privacy, conversations were still easily overheard. Just as I stepped outside, a well-known TV announcer approached Mary with a bright smile, ready to conduct an interview. Mary, a huge fan, was visibly excited. "An interview? Absolutely," she exclaimed. "The topic? The often fraught relationships between daughter-in-laws and their mothers-in-law. We heard there was a heated argument earlier and that the daughter-in-law left in tears. Can you tell us what happened?" the announcer asked, putting Mary on the spot. Caught off guard by the direct question, both Mary and Amanda's faces paled, clearly unsure how to discuss the embarrassing truth behind their manipulation to alienate Patrick's wife. From a distance, Patrick spotted me and made a desperate plea. "Pamela, please, I can't let this shame be known. It was all a misunderstanding," he implored, looking utterly defeated. By that point, my feelings for him had all but evaporated. Mary attempted to smooth things over with a strange smile. "Oh, we usually call each other Pamela. Come over here," she beckoned. As I approached, the microphone swung in my direction. "You say you call each other Pamela, but how does the daughter-in-law view her mother-in-law?" the announcer asked. "I've never been called that," I replied calmly. "I've often been labeled unpatriotic for not having children, though that's because Patrick and I haven't felt ready or confident enough to start a family. We haven't even tried for over 2 years, and I've always been told that was grounds for divorce," I recounted. I went on to explain how Patrick had initially supported me when I fell ill and had to take leave from work. I appreciated his kindness and followed him here, hoping a change of environment would help. But this is what I got in return. By then, I was out of tears, replaced by a sense of detachment. Seeing Mary and Amanda's embarrassed expressions brought me a small sense of satisfaction. As I stood there, preparing for the possibility that this might be broadcast nationwide, I couldn't help but reflect on the surreal day, noting Mary's distressed expression. When I mentioned the broadcast, a smile crept onto my face. "Well, since the daughter-in-law is considered an outsider, I guess I should take my leave. Goodbye," I said, savoring the moment as I exited the restaurant, ignoring the shouts and commotion that followed me. The day had been long and fraught, but in that final moment, I felt a profound sense of release. Walking away from the chaos, I felt a mix of relief and satisfaction. Although Mary and her family managed to prevent the broadcast of the footage, the incident quickly became a hot topic among our relatives and acquaintances, fueling gossip and speculation. In the aftermath, I returned to my room, packed my belongings, and moved back in with my parents. I sent the divorce papers to Patrick, but his response was delayed, prompting me to consider involving a lawyer. To my surprise, Patrick soon appeared at my parents' doorstep. My father, Peter, typically calm and composed, took charge of the situation with a firm hand. Patrick offered a heartfelt apology, expressing his desire to sever ties with his family and promising to trust only in me moving forward. However, his promises now felt hollow. Too little, too late. Peter, visibly upset by the years of distress Patrick had caused me, didn't hold back. "Why didn't you realize this sooner? What have you done to Pamela all these years? Just sign the divorce papers and leave," he instructed sternly, regret etched across his face. Patrick handed over the divorce papers, his handwriting shaky and barely legible. Despite the initial difficulties, the papers were processed successfully. It later emerged that Amanda had been the true cause of her infertility, a fact she had wrongfully attributed to her husband. Now on the brink of her own divorce, she no longer visited her in-laws. Patrick returned to live with his mother, Mary, in their small hometown, likely facing the uncomfortable rumors that lingered. But that chapter of my life was now closed. In the time that followed, life took a more positive turn for me. I reconnected with a classmate from my hometown, and we married. Our relationship blossomed with joy, and we soon welcomed a child. Now we have a 2-year-old daughter, and I am expecting our second child. My new mother-in-law is a true angel, supportive and kind, everything Mary was not. Life is unpredictable, but at this moment, I am living a fulfilling and happy life surrounded by love and support that I once thought was beyond my reach.